I'm Kelly Sunrose, and I live in Portland, Oregon. So yoga found me in a way when I was still a young girl. My aunt and uncle from San Francisco were practitioners, they're yogis, and they practiced with Judith Lasater, so they had this certain physical practice in the Iyengar tradition, and then they had a spiritual practice where they were devotees of Gangaji. And my entry point, or my invitation to learn more about the yoga, was through their gifts of yoga journal calendars and seeing these videos of Gangaji talking about the truths of life, which at the time when I was little seemed very obvious. And those are the things that now, having been with the practice for a number of years, like that's what I come back to. The things that seem obvious and seem almost like so silly, you can't even believe you're saying them out loud. Like there is magic there. That's where the zhuzh is. But I took my first yoga class when I was 18 in 1997, which gives you a sense that I might be something like 36 years old, if you do the math. And it was with my mom while on vacation in Sanibel under the Hale Bopp comet. We went to a class there at this spa, and the class itself was very gentle, and I remember really the only shape I remember was table, but I knew that there was something there for me and that the yoga was inviting me in. And I knew that there were worlds and layers to discover beneath what we can see with our eyes at first glance. So that's how I came to the practice. I had been practicing solidly for about 9 years when I decided to undertake a yoga teacher training program. And up until that point, my practice, my physical practice, had been very physical. I had an Ashtanga power yoga practice for most of those 9 years. And my meditation practice at that point involved me having carried around Jon Kabat-Zinn's book, Wherever You Go, There You Are, for about 5 years before I could even sit still to think about meditating. And so the circumstances under which I became a teacher were, I was a practicing attorney. I was a deputy district attorney in Colorado, if you can even believe that. And I was in my car commuting to this job that I knew was very necessary, and I felt a sense of duty to do with compassion. But I knew that this wasn't it for me. I knew that this was not what I was supposed to be doing. So I'm driving in my Jetta, listening to Deepak Chopra read the Bhagavad Gita. And that was my first experience with the Bhagavad Gita. And if you've ever listened to it, there is just this way that he says, "Oh, Arjuna," that I still hear. It's so special. And that experience with the Gita was clarifying and confusing, because in that moment, what is my Dharma? What the heck is my Dharma? Should it feel easy or hard? Should it feel like what everyone else wants me to do, or what I know to be true? And how much of that is like the replaying of a pattern? So I didn't quit my day job. I undertook a teacher training in a school in Denver called the Whole Yoga School that's part of the Shambhava School. And Shambhava Yoga has 2 ashrams in Colorado. So I spent a lot of time there while I was learning to be a teacher. And the program, I can't remember if it lasted a half a year or so, but it was over a number of months. And I was the person every single time we met who would be snoring in Shavasana. Like that was the kind of rest that I needed. And so when those people come to my class, the people who are like so worn out that they fall asleep instantly in any shape that resembles restoration, I am so happy that they have made their way. I like really feel that. And so I did this teacher training and felt compelled at the end to make the first of many irrational decisions. I quit my job and devoted the next couple of months to service. I did legal work. I volunteered for the Nature Conservancy and Western Resource Advocates, both environmental groups in Colorado doing environmental work. And then I was teaching yoga, mostly, someone actually hired me to teach a class straight out of the chute. And that sort of set things up. I did get another legal job, to pay the bills after about 3 months. But it was really important to me to do some service there. So that's how I became a teacher. I think confusion is such a good teacher. It's an invitation to be vulnerable, which is so hard and then so worth it and useful, because that is where we realize the connection. That's where we have this opportunity to say, oh, I thought I was the only one, but I'm not, and we're in it together. And so we can either open to that or we can shrink from it. And the shrinking feels like we're holding on to a story that we've just been telling ourselves over and over and over again, or that, we've put on a certain uniform to wear to fulfill a certain role that we have. And being, the first leap, from confusion into vulnerability, isn't necessarily all sunshine and rainbows or roses and sausages or whatever. Because there's an ego death that has to happen. Because, you're essentially saying I know this is the story that I've always told myself about myself, but it's not, that story doesn't fit anymore. That suit doesn't fit anymore. What do I wear now? And that's scary. And getting through that is the hardest work there is. And we go, it's so good because we're going to go through that until we leave this earth. There are manifestations of that, as we age and as we have children or as partners come and go, and people are born and die. Like, there's a recalibration over and over again. And, you know, the more comfortable we get in that space of the undefined or the shifting definition, like, that is the nectar. The challenges of being a householder, someone who practices, who's in the world, you know, doing the dishes at home, changing diapers, writing checks, paying the bills, that sort of thing. Like, the challenges, like, for me, like, that is the practice. The practice for me is a very distinct, like, identifiable moment when I'm in my Subaru wagon driving into the crazy Trader Joe's parking lot where there's a kid in the back seat, my kid, in the back, not some random kid, my kid in the back seat screaming at me to, like, put on her favorite song, you know, like some Taylor Swift, Shake It Off, whatever. And, you know, my phone's ringing, people are honking at me. Like, that is the yoga right there. And some days, I mean, I can sort of tell how well my practice is working depending on how I respond in that moment. If, you know, and, like, trust me, it's not always the most beautiful picture. You know, sometimes I'm like, everybody be quiet. But if I can pause, everything changes. And so for me, it's like, it is the practice. And everything that I do on the mat or on the cushion or with my harmonium, like, all of that is just in support of that practice. There's this dance around being too busy that is such a useful excuse to keep me from my practice. And it's funny because that, just saying that, I'm so busy, is like just adding fuel to this fire that then causes me to feel as if I have less and less time. So there's like a feeling in the body of, I'm so busy. Ooh, 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 I feel that right up here. And then because I'm swirling there in that place, like, yeah, then I am too busy in that moment. I'm feeling it. And if I can just, like, get past that and take 5 breaths or 3 breaths, like, if I can just take, like, 3 intentional breaths, like, I already remember that there is always space. And there is always space for practice. Like, whether it looks like a 90-minute powerful physical practice or whether it looks like 5 minutes of me rolling on the ground and breathing a little bit. But that feeling is addictive, and I think that is, you know, one of the main impediments to practice. So a number of years ago, Oprah and Eckhart Tolle had this program where they did like a book club for A New Earth, a book that Eckhart Tolle had written. And he gave this really wonderful example that, like, really sunk into the depths of my heart. And that is that he was talking about ways of knowing. And he said, you know, like, think about honey. And you could know the chemical composition of honey. You could write poems about honey. You could take classes about honey. You could write a PhD dissertation about honey. But until you taste honey, like, you don't know honey. And like that, I have just had so many experiences along those lines where, yes, The information is there, but until it syncs up with your body and your experience, you don't know it. I feel knowing in my body, and it's not always the same. Like sometimes, it's really like a thunk, grounded sensation, weighty, gravity appreciative. And then I also experience it like right up to the skin. And to me, like the way it feels is love. And there's no other way for me to even, when I'm in it, I know it. And there's like that sense of aliveness. And it's hard to be patient for that to happen. Like really and truly, like I come back to Yoga Sutra 112 over and over and over again, like abhyasa and vairagya, like commitment, devotion to practice requires this sense of letting go of an expectation for a result. And when I find myself, like that's where the knowing happens. Like, And to like go, it's useful to lean to one side or the other a little too heartily, I guess, from time to time, to know that you're out of the space. Like to me, practice without the non-attachment is like a recipe for obsession, compulsion, gripping. And there's no room for the divine, for play, for love when you're that clenched. Right now, I'm really inspired by doing less than we think we should, and letting ourselves be held by the support and the structures that are there, and really like yielding to that. But then like to move into these increments that are just like tinier and tinier and tinier. And it is so useful to do that in the body, to like be in a pose and, really like dial it in and then dial it back and back and back, like 5% more. And what that does is like, it informs me about how I'm moving through the world and how I'm engaging with other people, and like helps me hopefully show up more clear and able to help and love and do what I can do and need to do. I am so grateful for all of my teachers and all of the teachings that have been sent my way by some divine bit of grace. Right now, the teachers who I am drawing the most inspiration from are my friend Kira Ryder and our friend Patricia Sullivan, Eric Schiffman, Susan Marshall. And I could go on and on. I really feel like I could like say the name of every person I've ever met, because they've given so much of themselves to me and helped so much. The teaching that I come back to over and over and over again, like the teaching I give myself over and over again, is begin where you are right now. And that will mean different things at different points in all of our lives. But if we can just do that, magic will happen.